I know for me, like you, I've dealt with a lot of rejection. The biggest rejection for me started with my father. You know, my father was not in my life, and he chose, it was his choice. And I learned later that my father was a drug addict, which explained, some of his choices. But as a child, you still feel, why wasn't I enough? What was wrong with me that you did not want to be my dad, So that set off a pattern. And so what happens is, and you talked about trauma bonding, so when you have that hurt that you don't get healing for, every other situation feels like, here we are. I feel that same rejection. I feel that pain again.
Right. Or anticipating.
Yeah,
it may not have even happened. And you anticipate that it's going to happen because you're so used to it.
Yes.
So then you self-sabotage the new relationship because you're anticipating. You're trying to beat them to the punch.
Yes. And you know what I told my daughter, and I'll share this here because I believe in being vulnerable, because that's how you help people. Like if you keep everything to yourself, you don't. But dating, I dated in Atlanta for probably a stint of 10 years.
Wow.
Horrible. Right. Well, no, because God had a plan, but I'm just saying it was a long time. So I would date guys, and a lot of times it doesn't work out. And I'm really big on, like, I'm not, if I know something doesn't work, I keep it moving. But in your head, you're thinking, dang, that didn't work. What's wrong? And you start to think what's wrong with you. Right.
Yeah.
And I told her, and it's so funny, over that 10-year span, there were certain men that I really, I did not understand why it didn't work.
Right.
And so many of them came back to me later and were like, for different reasons. I had one sent me because I had blocked him. I'm like, I just ain't working. I blocked him. He sent me a long message on LinkedIn. Really? And he said he had some issues that he was dealing with, mental health issues, and he apologized for the fact that it didn't work out and told me that he thought I was an amazing woman. But I had no idea of what he was dealing with. Another guy was like, you know what? I had something else going on. I didn't want to hurt you. I knew you were a good woman. I didn't want to do that. So slowly but surely, like, you keep, as my granny would say, you learn something. If you keep laying down and getting up, you learn. So a lot of times that rejection, 9 times out of 10, that rejection had nothing to do with me.
Exactly.
It was about what they were dealing with in their lives.
Right. Just like when we were in Charlotte and I told that story about the hair.
Yes.
I wore the weave for a whole year, never really found my comfort zone, and only to have a conversation with that gentleman and say, hey, what do you think about me cutting my hair again? He was like, Chanelle, your short hair is your superpower. Yeah. And I'm like, here I am for a whole year operating outside of who I am, what I'm comfortable with. Yeah. If you're comfortable with that, then that's fine. Right. But I'm trying to find my identity, trying to be someone. I saw other women that he dated, and the commonality was the long hair. Right. So I thought, okay, let me put some in mine, because I ain't got time to grow mine back. So I'm going to go ahead and just go the quick route for him to say, no, that's not it. Yeah. So you have to be true to who you are. And like you said, most times it has absolutely nothing to do with you, and absolutely to do with where they are in their own journey. Right. And what's happening in their own life. So if someone doesn't want to be with you, then move on. And I know that's easier said than done. It's very easier said than done. But for me, I want to ask you, what has worked for you? For me, what I would do, and I'm being honest with y'all, I have some weird ways, but I figure out what works for me. So and this was just talking about when it comes to dating, because when it comes to business, it's a total different, I don't really take that personal. I learned early on I didn't have to take business rejection personal. But as an entrepreneur, I definitely dealt with a lot of business rejection. But when it came to dating, I would, like I told my daughter, like if I go out with a person and I like them and I knew that their intentions were, I had to find a way to cut that off so that I didn't keep focusing on it. I just tell myself, Christal, you got to stop. Christal, don't talk. Christal, focus on something else. And of course, a lot of times that was work, as a woman, that becomes your saving grace. But and after a while, you just kind of get control. You have to get control of your emotions. I think as women, you have to be able to be in control of your emotions, because otherwise your emotions will have you acting out and not wanting to do anything, feeling like I'm not worthy, I'm not going to date anymore. One of the things that I learned is
when I would go and I have a bad experience and I would say, I'm not dating anymore, that was wrong, because then I would not date for like a year or two and I wouldn't learn anything in that time.
Right.
You know, if you stop it, you're not moving forward, you're not maturing. And so my suggestion to people out there, women out there listening, is don't stop dating.
Right, absolutely. There are a couple things. So first of all, like Rebecca said at the event on Saturday, everybody is not going to be your cup of tea.
Yes.
Okay.
And you're not everybody's cup of tea.
You're not everybody's cup of tea. So, and that's fine. But then also, you have to take a step back and ask yourself, why is this person so great? Like, I wanted to ask this on Saturday to Delicious, but I had to watch my words. And Jason Lee, he put
Jason
it
went
perfect.
to it.
He put it perfect because we make these people great in our own head.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so important for us to tap into our own worth and self-value, self-worth and our own value. Because when you tap into that, when you know who you are, when you know what your purpose is, somebody doesn't want to be with you, you're like, cool, I'm okay with me.
Yep.
It's only when you don't know who you are and you're not okay with you that it takes you on this crazy path, because I've been there.
Yeah.
But in this season, I'm like, oh, you don't like me? Okay.
Chanelle said, it's my season now. It's my season.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to share with other people how you got to this place, because I know from in business, it's like I said, it's all of those things. If you haven't healed from something, right? Because it's one thing for a man not to want to date you or you not to be his cup of tea. But if you're still, like for me, I still had a lot when my ex-husband, my divorce happened, I still was hurt over my father's rejection. So this just felt like more of the same. But those two things were not related.
Right.
But in my head, it felt like men always reject me. Right. My dad, my husband, you know, I was afraid. I was actually afraid my son, I mean, I would just like love on my son. I was like, I don't want him to do what his dad and my dad did, right? I don't want him to see me that way. Right. So I had to heal. It had nothing to do with the ex-husband. It was all from the issue with my dad. I had to reconcile. And he passed away from an overdose, so he was not available to help me deal with that. But I had to find a way to heal, because otherwise you pick that scar and that burden up and you apply it to every situation after that.
Right. I, for me, am more intentional about the people that I connect with, because we typically know from the onset if we have compatibility or good chemistry. You can kind of check the vibe. And so what I also like to do is I stay in friend zone for a little while. Yeah. Let's get to know each other and build a foundation, you know, because there's no emotional attachment there. Yeah. So if you want to move on, you can. I'm not offended. If you don't return my text message, I'm not offended, because we're friends. And I still have to have self-talks like, okay, Chanelle, y'all is friends, right? So they'll get back to you. Right. You know, but I try to take my time and really get to know that person and find out if we have compatibility, and also give them an opportunity to get to know me as a person, and not just a woman that I'm attracted to, but you know, just really get to know me and my personality, because I'm kind of weird and awkward. We're in that space of attraction where I like you, because then your energy is off. You don't know what to say, you don't know what to do. You're like, oh my gosh, should I call? But when I'm your friend, I call you when I want to. Yeah, and we good. Yeah, right. Yeah. So I try to hang out there until we're both in the same space, and then we can move together. Yeah, that makes sense. Because I know for me, I'm guys are like, you know, would think I had a crush on them, and I'm like, if I talk to you all the time, I do not have a crush on you. Now if I'm because I get super shy, right? If I don't talk to you, then I probably like you, because I'm very shy when it comes to that. I prefer the guy to make the first move, but you know, if I like you, I kind of, you know, it's like you said, you kind of get in that phase of like, oh, I don't want to say the wrong thing. But all right, let's get into this panel, because you and I talked about our history, but we had Delicious, who is in the process of going through a divorce. Absolutely. And you know, it's interesting because it reminded me a lot when you had Mimi Faust on the panel in Charlotte, and she was in the middle of going through a breakup at that time. Delicious is in the middle of that, and you can tell that she was still not very comfortable with,
what happened. She's still working it through.
Right. I think Delicious doesn't know who Delicious is.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, Delicious, you are delicious. Nothing against this gentleman here, but I just couldn't understand the connection that she was making. She made this man larger than life in her head.
Yeah.
And that's why I said, Jason, I'm gonna lean on you because this is your lane.
Yeah.
Can you just be real for a minute and just let her know?
Yeah.
Can we all remind her who she is? And I think the room reminded her throughout the event, even after the event. People wanted to take pictures. They came up to her, gave her a hug, and let that woman know, like, listen, know who you are, know your worth, And then also, not only that, she said he had a pattern of abandoning his wife. He had a previous wife. So this has nothing to do with you. This is a pattern of behavior that he's operating in.
It is, but I think it's important to, I always try to look at, I guess it's the journalist in me or maybe the Libra in me that always tries to look at both sides of this, of the conversation. So you have, Delicious and her ex, you have Martel Holt and his ex, and we've seen their stuff play out on television. But the thing about it is, I think two things I pulled from that. I had told viewers that I had the opportunity to sit down with Bobby Brown and interview him maybe 2 weeks ago, right? And Bobby Brown at one point in time was like the biggest star on the planet, right? My prerogative, Bobby Brown was that dude. Like I'd be listening to him with my Walkman headphones, and he was everything. So he said during the height of his career, he's spending money. Women want him because he's Bobby Brown and he's charming. He's charismatic. You're doing sold out shows. At that point, he did not love himself, right? So, and I said, it's hard to understand how a person could have that much success and still not know their own value, their own worth. I don't want to say, and those are words from his mouth. So I don't want to put words in anyone else's mouth. We know that he was with Whitney Houston, an amazing talent who at some point in time, it would appear that maybe she did not know her worth also. Absolutely. So when I see someone like Delicious with over, millions of followers, a lot of times attention is not validation. Right. So people look at, and she's like, well, why would this man who was of this status want me? And we're looking at her like
status.
Well, I think, he is that man. What I was going to say is he's been in prison. He was in prison for a really long time for something he didn't do. So that comes with a lot of psychological issues that I can't even relate to.
Right.
So one of the things that Coach Rebecca, and also Coach Dr. Nicole on Put a Ring On talks about, if you don't have the tools, a lot of times you want something from someone that doesn't have that to give you.
Right, absolutely.
So I don't know his situation. I don't know the situation. I'm just saying from the outsider looking in, everyone knows that someone that's gone through something that traumatic has to have baggage from it. And if he hasn't healed from that, that could be challenging for him. But for her, because really it's always about you. It's not really about the other person.
Right.
For her, I think that a lot of times young women look up to women that have all these followers, and they're showing their body and they're getting attention, but that attention is not consistent with self-worth and self-validation.
Absolutely.
So for her to say that she could tell she didn't get that, talking to Bobby Brown, who was a huge star and still, didn't have that.
Didn't get it. Yeah.
So that's something that you really have to have for yourself. Like you said, it's not money. It's not fame, because she definitely commands attention,
Right, absolutely.
but it's still not
enough.
And that's because it has to start with self.
Absolutely. I also felt like, this is just in my own mind, I'm like, maybe he recognized who she was and he beat her to the punch. At a certain point, you got to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
We look at these relationships and the reality of it. I look at it, I'm just going to be real. I'm like, it's a mismatch.
Yeah.
It's a mismatch. And maybe he came to the recolation that maybe, the inevitable is going to happen anyway. So let me go ahead and make the move.
Yeah.
Or he may not have felt that he was enough.
Right.
Because men operate differently.
That's what women. Yes. It can be from the same root.
Yes.
But it comes out differently. Yeah.
Right. So
let's talk about Martel, girl. Because I know this situation. I talk about Love and Marriage Huntsville. I've interviewed Martel prior. And one of the things I said to him when he was on the blue carpet, and I think, I wish, because, a panel like that, you have so many people to talk to. But for Martel, I think there was an episode on Love and Marriage Huntsville where we see him with his father, and you see a lot of pain there, right? And I think a lot of times we forget that men, just like I can say I experienced rejection from my dad, and that really set the tone for my life. I guarantee that Martel's actions are rooted in some unhealed pain and rejection from his early childhood. Because for him, he's a good-looking guy. He's very charming. But you can tell what we see and what he feels probably are two different things.
Well, I watched season 2 because I initially, prior to this series of Cheministry, I hadn't watched the show.
Okay.
So I binge watched season 2, which is where a good bulk of the things
marital falling.
Yeah, the stuff started to unveil. And what I saw was a man who wasn't being heard. He comes across as being very passive aggressive with his wife. So he went to her and said, "Hey, these are my concerns." And she overtalked him, and she told him what she was going to do, and she told him that essentially, you're going to support me in this. And in his mind, he was like, okay. But I'm going to go do what I'm going to do too.
And he did.
And then we found out on the platform at Cheministry the other night that this affair was going on before the show.
Way before the show.
I don't think no one ever asked that question. I was listening. I was like, were you having this affair before? So this was going on.
Yeah.
And so that's where he got his validation. He went and he got it somewhere else.
A lot of times men do that. A lot of times men will go look for it outside. And it's funny because I was talking to one of the dating coaches that was there that came to the event on Saturday. And I was actually talking to Rebecca Lynn Pope's husband, Carrie Pope. And we were talking about how men, a lot of times, if they're dealing with rejection, their first thing is to go find a woman to make them feel better.
Yes.
And a lot of times the woman, and this is not talking about Martel's situation, but a lot of times they'll go to a woman and it'll be a sexual relationship, and we'll think, oh, he just wants sex. And he was like, it's not about sex. It's really about the fact that there's validation there, and a woman is speaking to him in a language that he understands, and it feels, so the wife is feeling like, oh, he just wanted sex, but no, he just wanted to be heard. He just wanted to be validated, and he didn't know how to ask for that.
Right. Absolutely. I see a lot of people, because I did the live with him before the actual show, and there are a lot of people out there invested in this relationship. Oh my God. It's
like the power couple that everybody wanted to love, and that went wrong.
But they tend to gloss over how those two got into that situation. And I wanted to shine light on that, because I said, okay, guys, you're looking at him cheating, but did you pay attention to how he got there? The treatment on how he got there. I mean, Mel is a piece of work.
Well, I think there's two sides. There's always two sides to a story, and I think Martel's cheating really had more to do with him not being. He needs to understand how to deal with himself, right? Because really, if you cheat every time you feel that you don't feel validated and heard, that's not what a mature person does. Because women can do it too. We just probably don't get caught.
What do you do? So let me ask you this though: in a situation, because we saw him go to his wife, right, and talk to her about what issues he had, right, before we even learned about the cheating, right. So in that situation or scenario, he did that. She didn't listen. And he even said on the platform that she even said to him at one time, why don't you go out and get a girlfriend? And that's exactly what he did. But aside from that, because that was bad advice. Well, she was being smart. She's being smart. But really, seriously, what should he have, or what could he have done if he wasn't being heard? Like, what's your next course of action? What do you do? That's interesting. I'll give you my honest opinion, because I just got married, right? And I'm gonna tell you, there's no person that's going to give you what you need all the time. That is why you have to be mature enough and in tune with your star player, as Cat Williams said, enough to know
that I need to get the help, because there are going to be times in every relationship. It could be a friendship. You and I could be super close friends, and something happened to me and I need you. You may not be able to be there because you may just not be able to. It doesn't mean that you don't love me. It doesn't mean that we're not supposed to be friends. But as humans, we're all fallible, right? So I think you have to understand in marriage. I think Martel had an idea that if I'm not happy as a man, I have a right to do this, because he said that in the last season. He's like, well, this is what men do all the time, that nobody leaves. He's thinking that this is how I can deal with my unhappiness, and that's not true. A leader, a man, a head of household, if you're not getting what you need, you've got to figure out a way to do that without putting your household at risk. And to me, it's so heartbreaking, because like I said, I've talked to Melody. I like her very much. I talked to Martel. I see the potential with him. I think he really wants to be a good guy. I don't think he's just an evil person. But their family was broken, and that's heartbreaking, because we think, yeah, we've got the two of them that go back and forth, but you got 4 gorgeous children, beautiful children, and they're hurt from all this. I don't care what people say. Yes, you can protect them, but you can't protect them from the hurt of that family being split apart. Right. So what I would tell a person in Martel's situation, before he was already cheating before we saw that on the second season, because he had the idea that it was okay for him to do that. That meant he, that's manly. Like, I'm gonna go get my needs over here, but you don't go anywhere. You got to fix it with yourself, because if you fix yourself, you react differently. And that's what the panel was about. Like, how do we deal with rejection in a positive way? Jason Lee.
But see, let me before you go there with Jason. The thing about that is, in friendships, if a friend is not meeting a particular need, you can go find you another friend, and no one's going to condemn you for it. Right. But in a marriage, not so much. Right. So, I mean, that's just like, it's still a question mark for me, a single woman, because I can't imagine what it feels like to be stuck in a situation where you're constantly crying out, saying, hey, needs are not being met. Yeah. These are things that I can only get from my spouse or my wife or my husband, and you're not hearing me.
But they may not do. I think that's why marriage is so, people should think before they do it.
So then I think it's an issue of compatibility.
Well, it's not even that, because it could change. Like I'll give you an example. There are times in marriages, I dealt with cancer, right? And I went to support groups after the fact. That was part of the thing that drove our marriage apart, because a lot of times if a spouse is sick or a spouse loses a parent, you can go through depression that the other person cannot help you through. Right. There's no way. We heard that with Will and Jada. Not that want to promote the way their marriage is at any point, but not one person cannot make you happy. Right. I cannot be responsible for my husband's happiness. He's not responsible for my happiness. Right. If I feel like I need validation, I have to work on Christal. And that's what you just said about friendship. You can get another friend. Well, like I have a friend from back home. I can't get another best friend that's known me since I was 10. Is it the same type of relationship? No, but the maturity and the way I approach it is, because I don't want to lose my friend from 5th grade. Right. If she can't be the friend to me at that moment, I have to figure out how to deal with things on my own. And I think in any marriage, no matter how great your marriage is, there's always going to be a point where you may not have it to give. I'm not saying that she was right at all, but I'm saying Martel made a commitment. When you get married, you make a commitment to God in that person. You say, hey, I'm going to forsake all others. So 2 wrongs don't make a right. And I think we're in a culture where people are tit for tat. I hit you, you hit me back. Right. I hit you. That's not marriage. At least it's not supposed to be. So if you find yourself in that situation, you have to do the work and start to do what you're supposed to do. And then if your spouse doesn't come around, eventually you may have to look at separating and getting a divorce. Right. But adding another person to the...
I just want to, because I just hate that people beat up. Yeah. Just on him.
Right. Well, no, you're right. I will say this. My ex-husband cheated on me, but I'm mature enough to say it was not all his fault. He probably did not know how to handle a lot of things we were dealing with. Right. And I didn't know how to be, a great wife. I didn't know how to be supportive at the time. So I'm not excusing what he did,
right,
but I'm saying that it wasn't all one. It's never one-sided. It's never all one person's fault. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and get into the rest of the panel, because we had Jason Lee, who is a phenomenon unto himself. Yes. Also Daryl Drake, and so much more. Come right back. We're right here with Chanelle Scott with Cheministry. We'll be right back.